Well, hello folks, this is Shot 2. Welcome to the first edition of STEAMshot. What is STEAMshot? Well, STEAMshot is an opportunity for sales managers, or as we prefer to call them here at Steam and Cream, sales team leaders. And the reason that we're going to put these on a Monday is to get you prepared for the week ahead, or in this case, for the month ahead, or even more importantly, for the run to the end of the year. And what we're talking about today, or the subject matter, is that of meetings. Now, many sales teams do run effective sales team meetings. These are usually done on a weekly basis, sales meetings if you like. Not that I've got plenty to say about those at a later date. And for us, there's three types of meetings that carry on from here. So the first is that sales meeting. We like to call that, if you like, an activity meeting. Fundamentally, that's about setting activities that occur from one week to the next that make up for any shortfall on objective and keep us on track. Okay, so they're a given. The second type of meeting is the one we're going to talk about today, is a planning meeting. And as the title suggests, it enables us to plan activities against objectives in a predetermined manner so that after a period of time you can actually and literally predetermine the outcomes for the month ahead in productivity, be it listings, be it sales, be it management of the properties, and importantly keeping salespeople on track toward their goals and targets. More on this later. The third type of meeting is one that's going to be taking place before the end of the year, and that is what we call our objective meeting, or a goal-setting meeting for the year ahead, being 2017. Sometimes we like to run these, or I at least did, twice a year, so 6 monthly, and some people like to run these quarterly. That's entirely up to yourself. But today we're talking about the planning meeting. And a planning meeting, as the title suggests, is about thinking about what's going to be occurring in the office before it does. Now, we like to see these meetings take place, this is the first thing, between about, or from, anywhere from about the 23rd to as late as the 28th. So I know that's a little bit past time now, but it's never too late to get this, what we're going to talk about, into action, certainly at this time of the year, as you'll soon see. And the reason we run the months to 28 days is because it fits into a nice 4-week cycle. That meaning those end days, we call these the in-between days. Any salesperson that is well and truly on track for the month, they can goof off, take those days off. And of course, anyone that's having a shortfall, they can make up for any shortfall, so they've got those extra few days on the end of the month. Importantly, some salespeople like to get a head start, so they work those in-between days, and you can start the month on 2 or 3 listings. So we think that's important that you take that on board. Now, the planning meeting is not like the sales meeting. There's no rigid formality. It does run to an agenda, but we don't actually have to have everybody turning up, suited up or otherwise. I like to run these meetings in a very informal environment, usually at the end of the day or at least early evening. Quite often, to keep them fairly casual, we would have beers, pizzas, something like that, some food brought in, and everyone just takes a pretty chilled approach, albeit that it's conducted and run by the sales team leader to a specific agenda. Now, the agenda runs out something like this, and I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because, again, I'll come back to this at a later date to give it more credence for those of you that it is new to. But this being a very specific meeting, and we want to run this to around 15 minutes to inspire you to sort out the month ahead. So the agenda starts with setting targets and goals. So we look at the previous month, and then we go with each salesperson individually and set their goals in the first instance and targets. Now, this causes me to give you some definition between the two. Most sales teams, or most salespeople, and indeed in managing salespeople, most managers, most team leaders, talk about the setting of objectives for salespeople primarily around targets. Now, I say there's a difference between goals and targets, and it's fairly succinct. A goal, in my opinion, is a mandatory thing. In the same way that you can't get someone half pregnant, we set the goal at a conservative level because you simply must achieve it. So if that goal looks like it's been compromised at any stage, all leaves cancelled, if I'm watching a salesperson that's falling off the rails and not looking like they're going to achieve their goal, well, then I put them into intensive care. At a later date, I'll talk about this. We actually have what we call a yellow and red card system that we work with salespeople, where we breathe life into it if they go into intensive care, if they're falling off the rails on goals. So goals are mandatory, and these need to be set conservatively. Typically, we benchmark these against the previous year's performance. Now, I don't mean a worsting performance, but we look back last year and let's say somebody listed 3 properties and sold 2. Well, then a conservative hike on that goal might be to bring it up to 4 listings and maybe 3 sales, but maybe not. I want the goals to be clearly understood to be nothing short of mandatory, and they simply must be achieved. The second thing is targets. Now, targets, and the reason I actually create the contrast between the two, unlike a goal, a target is something you take aim at, but don't necessarily hit. In fact, I've seen people just fall shy of hitting a target. Everyone sort of applauds them and says, what a good try. So I'm okay with targets being set, but I fully accept and understand that they may not be reached. So when we're benchmarking targets, they are usually benchmarked against your best month ever. So if your best month ever for listings was 6, I would be happy to set a target of 7 listings if you're going to get it. And the same carries on with sales and otherwise. So that's the first thing that we run through on the agenda, and we go through this very, very carefully as a sales team leader, being careful to make sure that salespeople don't put too much emphasis on setting goals that they're not going to be able to accomplish. And then secondly, I'm happy for the targets for them to run a little bit wild on that. So we review numbers. Okay, then we move to setting on what we call a monthly theme. I believe each month needs a theme. I learnt this many years ago from John McGrath, where he said that, whatever aspect of the business that you're attacking, whether it be leading the team or otherwise, pick one thing, focus on that, get it absolutely right before you move forward. And this carries on with, I guess, the monthly theme. Now, it can be linked to a whole range of things. As you'll soon see here, we're going to link it to extending or combining the 2 months. So fundamentally right now, the good theme would be the run to Nocember. Nocember being that we actually get rid of December, which I'll explain in a second, and we blow out the month of November to 6 or 7 weeks prior to Christmas. And there's a very specific reason for this. But, you can actually have a theme of training. You might be working on training to mitigate any reductions or discounts with fee. You might be training on your listing presentation. It could actually be a goal where you've decided to implement some new marketing method or whatever. So you just run the theme according to what might be running out there. Okay, so that's the theme. The next part on the agenda is getting an exhaustive list as the sales team leader of listings that are coming up. And I mean pushing even someone that is even given a whim that they might be listing their property, getting these onto a list and getting them into clear view, whether it be on control boards or otherwise, where the whole team can observe these. You see, I'm constantly trying to get across to sales team leaders that you cannot monitor, manage, or manipulate that which you can't see. So the more visual things are, the more visual objectives are, the more visual imminent listings and imminent productivity is, the more likely it is to actually materialize. So we get that exhaustive list up, and from there we start to determine actions. So if we're looking at one that's a bit shaky, we start suggesting, with the aid of the team, whilst you're eating pizza and drinking beers, what sort of actions could we take to take this from a maybe to actually seeing it listed on our agenda. And you'll soon see that this time of year there's a bit of reluctance with a lot of sellers with what they do. So we created, which I'll soon reveal to you, a little section that enables us to get those listings onto the market, get signboards on them, even though they may not be advertised or marketed strongly like other properties. So this helps as well. Once we get through that list, we then move on in the agenda to prospecting, start determining actions. So once I've got an exhaustive list and I can look at the listings that we can count on collectively as a team, both individually and then as a team, I then start to look at the shortfall and what prospecting activity, what resource needs to be deployed to back it up to create listings for salespeople. What do we actually need to do, plan ahead of time to ensure that we have the listing presentations that are going to yield for us the listings to, in the first instance, crack our goals and give us every chance of moving toward the targets we may have set for ourselves individually. From there, once we've got that out of the way, then we start to look at sales. So we look at sales activity. I go through each property one by one, asking the question if there needs to be some adjustment around price expectation. If you've got auctions, what action needs to be taken to ensure that we turn these listings across from on the market to sold, so they figure out in the sales inventory. We then, then even coming back on prospecting, looking at how we can leverage off these, whether it be accolades or otherwise. All of this stuff is planned, is predetermined as we move forward. So very important that we get an exhaustive list around that. Then we move to training. What will we be training on for the next month? We set a training agenda. Now, a lot of companies like to outsource this. I've been involved in, being the coach for a team, and that's fine. But nothing is more encouraging than a team handing to me, even as a sales trainer, an agenda for the month and saying, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is how we've set our theme up even, but this is the training agenda we have for the month ahead. And Mark, what can you outline? Now, if you're doing this locally, again, that's fine, but actually have a training event, have a platform, and have a full understanding of what you expect everyone to adhere to so that you can make progress around training. And then last but not least, we then set up when or how the next meeting will be set up so that we can indeed, again, move forward. So in this instance, right now, you'd be setting up that objective meeting, that goal-setting meeting to plan the year ahead. And anyone that's part of my coaching program or any of our Cream and Steam leaders, please get in touch with me, because I'm looking to put something together in late November that will show you or train you on how to actually set this up with your team, and know that when you start on January 1, you can hit the ground running. I see many, many companies running these kickstart programs in late January or sometime during February. And in my opinion, it's just a little bit too late. You need to have that agenda, those plans in place before you even commence the new year, and well and truly before Santa arrives. All right, so that would be pretty much the agenda that we run from there. But now I really want to give it some real credence as we move into this particular planning meeting that you could be running later this evening or perhaps tomorrow morning before the Melbourne Cup starts, and that is setting up the run through to Christmas. So the first thing that we suggest that you do is pretty much cancel December. Get rid of it. Now, what that then means is inside of the planning meeting, we have to up the numbers of listings on goals and sales, and of course targets. Now this is pretty simple, because all you need to do is combine the number of listings that were achieved for November of last year, if this is new to you, couple that with the number of listings that were achieved for December, and that then becomes your goal, and you might want to exceed that by 1, and the same with the targets. But the reason that we combine the two is I just find that once we actually get to the end of November, and certainly by the 10th of December, most people forget real estate, forget the industry, in the country, their attitude goes on holidays. So by actually creating that 6 or 7 week month and running it all the way through to when you close for the break, it just changes the dynamic of the numbers, and people don't feel sort of inadequate actually getting those short numbers. So that's the first thing that we do. The second thing that I do is, if you are having a Christmas party, and this is a very, very strong suggestion. I see companies stupidly trying to get the Christmas party out of the way early in the month. That's dangerous. For me, I have the Christmas party no more than 72 hours before we actually close the doors for the break. Why? Because again, if you have that Christmas party in the early part of December, the head goes on holidays, and so too does the productivity. For a sales team leader, this is just an absolute killer, so I wouldn't go that way. I just believe it sends the wrong message to the team. And of course, when we're setting those goals and targets, you just want to increase those in line with the benchmarking that we talked about before, so that sets it up beautifully. And then the other thing that you're going to see around this time of year, and this really brings me to the real guts of something that I wanted to share with you, and that is, of course, that you're going to get a lot of sellers saying right now that they don't want to list their property this side of Christmas, so they'll wait till the new year. Now, this happens with great regularity. In fact, we're even seeing a rise in the number of salespeople, if you like, that...